Researchers are studying the impact of two different fertilizers on the growth rate of tomato plants over a 5-week period. Each week, they measure the height increase of the plants in centimeters and record it. The table below shows the data. Which fertilizer resulted in a higher average increase? Please pause the video and read the passage and try and solve it. Your ability to solve questions on averages is very important for the GED. It's needed for the GED Science, Social Studies, and Math. The average is the sum of all items over the number of items. So for fertilizer A, we have the sum, which is 0.5 plus 0.8 plus 1.0 plus 1.2 plus 1.8, divided by the number of weeks, which is 5. We add these numbers to get 5.3 divided by 5. This will give us 1.06. This is the average height increase after applying fertilizer A. We do the same for fertilizer B. We have the sum, which is 0.3 plus 0.7 plus 0.9 plus 1.1 plus 1.4, divided by the number of weeks, which is 5. We add these numbers to get 4.4 divided by 5. This will give us 0.88. This is the average height increase after applying fertilizer B. So we can see that fertilizer A gives the highest average height increase. This is how to go about it. It's important to know this method. When you become good at this, you won't use this method. You'll notice that for both fertilizers, we have the same number of weeks that the height is being measured. So the one with the highest sum is the one with highest average height. So you'll just add this and compare. Please note that this works only if the number of items are the same. If one has 5 weeks and the other is 6 weeks, you cannot use this method. Please encourage us to post more videos by liking, sharing, and subscribing. We really appreciate it. Researchers measured the daily water consumption in liters at a small office over a 1-week period. Unfortunately, the data for Friday was lost due to a recording error. Despite this, the known average daily water consumption for the week is 50 liters. Determine the water consumption for Friday, given that the average daily consumption for the week is 50 liters. This is another kind of average question. You should know how to solve average questions with missing information. To solve this question, you first have to multiply the average by the number of items. The average was given as 50. The period is 1 week, which is 7 days. So the number of items is 7. 50 times 7 is 350. Next, we will add all the values we have been given. 45 plus 55 plus 52 plus 50 plus 53 plus 41. This will give us 296. To find the missing data, we will subtract the 296 from the 350 total. This will give us 54 as the water consumption for Friday. Please go over this setup. We use a different approach in our GED math question. If this is straightforward for you, please stick to it. If not, leave a comment and we will post the other method next time. Thank you. Using the same information, we want to calculate the range of water consumption over the week. The range is the highest value minus the lowest value. Please note that the information about the missing data, that is the water consumption for Friday, is part of the values we are considering. So if it was the highest or lowest, we will use it. In this case, it is not. The highest value is the water consumption for Tuesday, which is 55. The lowest value is the water consumption for Sunday, which is 41. 55 minus 41 is 14. So the range of water consumption over the 1-week period is 14 liters. A study was conducted to investigate the rate of reaction of 3 different chemicals with hydrochloric acid by measuring the volume of carbon dioxide produced over time. The graph below shows the results of the findings. Based on the experimental results, which of the following statements is correct? I don't want to read the answer choices twice, so let's go right into answering it. A. Magnesium oxide produces more carbon dioxide than zinc carbonate at each minute. This statement is incorrect. Let's consider the second minute. Zinc carbonate clearly produces more carbon dioxide. Zinc carbonate produces about 60 milliliters of carbon dioxide, and magnesium oxide produces about 20 milliliters. B. Sodium bicarbonate produces the least carbon dioxide at the 3-minute mark. This statement is also false. Let's look at the 3 minutes mark. Magnesium oxide produces the least carbon dioxide. This is about 30 milliliters. C. Sodium bicarbonate produces carbon dioxide at a rate faster than magnesium oxide. This is the correct statement. A lot of students will get this correct because they guessed correctly. For this graph, the chemical with the highest volume also has the highest rate. These two things are not the same. You have to know the difference. To find the highest volume, you are looking at the raw numbers. This is what we did with option A and option B. To find the highest rate, you are looking at how steep the slope is. Let's say we have another chemical that has a slope like this. Although this chemical has less volume than the sodium bicarbonate, it has a higher rate than the sodium bicarbonate because it has a steeper slope. In most instances, you'll just use eyeballing to identify which line is steeper. There can be times where you might need to calculate it. You can learn how to calculate the slope from our GED Math videos. Read the passage and graph and answer the questions below. A group of scientists wants to study the effect of temperature on the hatching of turtle eggs. They collect turtle eggs from a beach and incubate them at different temperatures to see if there is a correlation between temperature and the time it takes for the eggs to hatch. Their results are shown in the graph below. Which step of the scientific method involves collecting turtle eggs from a beach and incubating them at different temperatures? A. Observation. B. Hypothesis. C. Experimentation. D. Conclusion. To answer questions like this, you need to be familiar with the scientific method. You can check out a full lesson on the scientific method on ultimateged.com. The scientific method is a systematic approach used by scientists to investigate natural phenomena and acquire new knowledge. The method involves making observations about a natural phenomenon, forming an hypothesis, that is, formulating a testable explanation or prediction based on the observations, designing and conducting experiments to test the hypothesis, analyzing and interpreting the data obtained from the experiments, and drawing a conclusion based on the results. Please note that there are different variations of these steps, but the idea is always the same. The most common one is the addition of communication as the last step. For this question, the correct answer is C, experimentation. This step involves designing and conducting experiments to test the hypothesis formulated. In this case, the scientists are manipulating the temperature of the eggs to determine if it has an effect on the time it takes for them to hatch. What is the independent variable in the study of the effect of temperature on the hatching of turtle eggs? A. Time to hatch. B. Temperature. C. Type of turtle. D. Location of beach. The correct answer is B. Temperature. To be good in this section of the GED, you must be able to identify the dependent and independent variables. Independent variables and dependent variables are two types of variables used in scientific investigations. The independent variable is the variable that is manipulated or changed by the experimenter to observe its effect on the dependent variable. On the other hand, the dependent variable is the variable that is being measured or observed and is affected by the independent variable. In other words, the independent variable is the cause or predictor of the outcome, while the dependent variable is the effect or the outcome being measured. For example, in the study of the effect of temperature on the hatching of turtle eggs, the independent variable is the temperature, which is being manipulated by the experimenter, while the dependent variable is the time it takes for the eggs to hatch, which is being observed and measured. The experimenter is interested in observing how changes in the independent variable, temperature, affect changes in the dependent variable, time to hatch. What conclusion can be drawn from the graph? A. Higher temperatures result in faster hatching times. B. Lower temperatures result in faster hatching times. C. There is no correlation between temperature and hatching time. D. More data is needed to draw a conclusion. Before we answer this question, let's have a quick lesson on graphs. You can learn more from ultimateged.com. The title of the graph tells us what the graph is about. The x-axis, which is the horizontal axis, is usually the independent variable. The y-axis, which is the vertical axis, is usually the dependent variable. Graphs of this form are read from left to right. The slope of the line determines if the line is increasing or decreasing. For this graph, we can say that there's a decrease in the time to hatch when the temperature increased from 25 to 27 degrees Celsius, and time to hatch continues to decrease as you increase the temperature. This means our answer is A. Higher temperatures result in faster hatching times. Based on the graph, which temperature resulted in the shortest time to hatch? A. 25 degrees Celsius. B. 29 degrees Celsius. C. 35 degrees Celsius. D. 31 degrees Celsius. The correct answer is C. 35 degrees. The work here is to locate the point with the shortest time. That point will be this. Then look for the temperature that corresponds to it. That temperature is 35 degrees. Please note that it's not always possible to get exact values on a graph. You need to make your best guess. For a point like this, if we want to find the number of days, the exact value has not been given. We can estimate it to be 53. It's above 50 and below 60. During a field trip to a local pond, students observed and identified various organisms belonging to different taxonomic groups. The goal of the field trip was to understand the biodiversity and distribution of these organisms within the pond ecosystem. After careful observation and documentation, the students found that the pond was inhabited by 20% fish, 30% amphibians, 25% birds, and the rest were insects. They decided to represent this data in the form of a pie chart to visualize the percentage of each taxonomic group present in the pond ecosystem. Based on this information, answer the following questions. According to the students' observations at the pond, which taxonomic group has the highest percentage of organisms in the pond ecosystem? A. Fish. B. Amphibians. C. Birds. D. Insects. The correct answer is B. Amphibians. Pie charts are another form of graphs that you need to be familiar with for the GED. For this question, you can just observe the pie chart and notice that the pie for the amphibians is the largest. Eyeballing is always your first option. Eyeballing might not work for values that are very close. Calculation is your second option. To answer this question, you need to know the percentage of organisms that are insects, since that was not given in the passage. A full pie chart represents 100%. To get the percentage that are insects, we will subtract 100 minus the percentage of fish, which is 20, minus the percentage of amphibians, which is 30, minus the percentage of birds, which is 25. This will give us 25% as the percentage of insects. Now that we have all the percentages, we can see that the amphibians, which is 30%, is the highest. What is the balanced chemical equation for the reaction between hydrogen gas and oxygen gas to form water? A. 2H2 reacts with O2 to get H2O. B. H2O breaks down to 2H2 and O2. C. 2H2 reacts with O2 to give 2H2O. D. 2H2O breaks down to H2 and O2. The correct answer is C. 2 molecules of hydrogen gas react with 1 molecule of oxygen gas to produce 2 molecules of water. Balancing equations is one of the most important things on the GED. Our work here is to make sure that there are equal numbers of atoms of each element on both sides of the equation. On the left side, there are 4 atoms of hydrogen. That is the 2 times this 2. For the oxygen, there are 2 atoms. On the right side, please note that this 2 affect both the hydrogen and oxygen. So there are 4 atoms of hydrogen, which is this 2 times this 2. And there are 2 atoms of oxygen, because of this 2. So we can see that there are the same amount of hydrogen and oxygen on both sides of the equation, so it is balanced. Please go to ultimateged.com and try on your hands on more examples. This requires practicing. What is the coefficient for the oxygen gas in the balanced chemical equation for the combustion of propane to form carbon dioxide and water? A. 2. B. 3. C. 4. D. 5. The correct answer is D. 5. The work here is to make sure that the number of atoms of oxygen are the same on both sides of the equation. We need to find all the oxygen on the right side and make sure that there are the same number of molecules on the left side. On the right side, oxygen is found in the carbon dioxide and the water. For the carbon dioxide, we have 3 times 2. Remember we said that this 3 multiplies both the carbon and the oxygen. This will give us 6 atoms of oxygen. For the water, we have 4 times 1. This will give us 4. Again, remember the preceding 4 multiplies both the hydrogen and the oxygen. The total number of oxygen atoms is therefore 10. To balance it out, we need 10 atoms of oxygen on the left side. So we can put 5 molecules here. The 5 will multiply the 2 to get 10. Now the molecules of oxygen is the same on both sides, so it is balanced. Please, it's important you practice more examples on this. Read the passage and answer the question below. Traits are inherited characteristics that are passed down from parents to offspring through genetic material. Some traits are controlled by a single gene, while others are influenced by multiple genes and environmental factors. One example of a single gene trait is the ability to roll your tongue, which is determined by a single gene with 2 possible versions or alleles. If an individual inherits at least 1 copy of the dominant allele for tongue rolling, they will be able to roll their tongue. However, if they inherit 2 copies of the recessive allele, they will not be able to roll their tongue. Another example of a trait influenced by multiple genes and environmental factors is height. While genes play a role in determining an individual's height, factors such as nutrition and physical activity can also have an impact. Question 12. What is an example of a single gene trait? A. Eye color. B. Height. C. Skin tone. D. Tongue rolling ability. The correct answer is D. Tongue rolling ability. The passage provides tongue rolling ability as an example of a single gene trait that is determined by a single gene with 2 possible versions or alleles. Question 13. If one parent is heterozygous for tongue rolling ability and the other parent is homozygous recessive for this trait, what is the probability that their offspring will be able to roll their tongue? A. 0%. B. 25%. C. 50%. D. 75%. The correct answer is C. 50%. Since genetics is a very important topic on the GED Science, let's spend some time learning how we got the 50%. When we talk about genetics, we use the terms heterozygous, homozygous dominant, and homozygous recessive to describe the different possible genotypes for this trait. Heterozygous refers to having two different alleles for a particular gene. In the case of tongue rolling ability, the dominant allele determines the ability to roll the tongue, while the recessive allele results in the inability to roll the tongue. Therefore, an individual who is heterozygous for tongue rolling ability would have the genotype, indicating that they have one copy of the dominant allele and one copy of the recessive allele. Homozygous dominant refers to having two identical copies of the dominant allele. In the case of tongue rolling ability, an individual who is homozygous dominant would have the genotype, indicating that they have two copies of the dominant allele and are able to roll their tongue. Homozygous recessive refers to having two identical copies of the recessive allele. In the case of tongue rolling ability, an individual who is homozygous recessive would have the genotype, indicating that they have two copies of the recessive allele and are unable to roll their tongue. Now, let's use this information to answer the question. If one parent is heterozygous for tongue rolling ability, let's say the father, and the other parent is homozygous recessive, let's say the mother, we can use a Punnett square to determine the possible genotypes and phenotypes of their offspring. Here is an example Punnett square for this cross. Let's put the father's genotype here. Let's put the mother's genotype here. You can interchange them. It won't make a difference. The first section will be the dominant R and recessive R. We got that because of this R here and this R here. We do that for the next section. This and this will give us a dominant R and a recessive R. We go to the third section. We have two recessive R. This is because of this R and this R. Then we fill up the last section. Same idea. We have two recessive R. If the offspring is heterozygous or homozygous dominant, they will be able to roll their tongue. Here we have two possibilities of heterozygous. This is out of 4 total possibilities. This is 2/4, which can be reduced to 1/2. This is the same as 50%. The information below describes the properties of two substances. Which substance is denser? Substance A is 20 grams and has a volume of 10 centimeter cubed. Substance B is 15 grams and has a volume of 5 centimeter cubed. A. Substance A. B. Substance B. C. Both substances have the same density. D. Cannot be determined from the information given. Density is calculated by dividing the mass of a substance by its volume. Therefore, the density of substance A is 20 grams divided by 10 centimeters cubed. This is equal to 2 grams per centimeter cubed. The density of substance B is 15 grams divided by 5 centimeter cubed. This will be equal to 3 grams per centimeter cubed. Since B is greater than A, it means substance B is denser than substance A. So the correct answer is B. A container holds a fixed amount of an ideal gas. If the pressure of the gas in the container is doubled while keeping the volume and number of moles constant, what happens to the temperature of the gas? The ideal gas law is PV equals nRT, where P is pressure, V is volume, N is the number of moles, R is the gas constant, and T is temperature. A. It remains the same. B. It is halved. C. It doubles. D. It quadruples. The correct answer is C. It doubles. Please do not overthink on GED calculation questions or questions like this. They are usually designed to test your ability to recognize patterns and relationships and accurately interpret and use formulas. For this question, all we have to keep in mind is that it is an equation. To keep it equal, Whatever you do to one side must be done to the other side. We are told that the pressure is doubled, so we can multiply pressure by 2. To balance the equation, we have to multiply something on the right side by 2. We are told that the volume and number of moles are constant, so we cannot do anything to it. R is also a constant. It is the gas constant. To balance it, we can only multiply the temperature by 2. This means that the temperature doubles. We will end this video here. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to get the full course at ultimateged.com.